Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and it really does start to feel like they went a bit over the top with these new ascendancies in the Phrecia League, because every last one I try seems to be more overpowered than the previous. And this one is feeling just absolutely juicy, and that is the Antiquarian with the ward stacking tech, which just seems a bit over the top for what you can get out of what you put into it. So the idea of the Ascendancy is get a lot of ward. Well, not the entire Ascendancy, but the way you should possibly build around the Ascendancy is get a lot of ward, get the Night Grip gloves, and turn all that ward into a bunch of chaos damage. And as you can see here in my current character, I've got about 27,000 ward, and it's not too hard to get to numbers like that. And then that in turn gives you a shitload of flat added chaos that you can basically build any kind of character around as sort of just a template. I wanted to go kind of meme with my attempt on this character, so I wanted to do some cast on crit stuff, which means that it's pretty hard to build into for like crit and various damage scaling modifiers and stuff, but you got such a large base of chaos damage that you should be able to kind of pull off whatever you want. So my goal was to just kind of go into it a bit blind and feel out some skills and see what I feel like doing. I leveled as cast on crit into exsanguinate as just like actual fizz damage over time, and I essentially had no ascendancy until about level 70, so it was a pretty smooth setup for all things considered, as a marauder that is. And then once I got a bunch of ward, I started trying a few things out. I was doing exsanguinate, cast on crit, and it was going well enough, but eventually I slipped into Reap, since that the Awakened spell cascade support is only 2 divines at the time. I thought, why not give Reap a shot with this? So what we're seeing here now is Cyclone, cast on crit into Reap, and then you've got a lot of flat added chaos, which you just scale around with some added chaos and some spell damage. But because of the way Night Grip works, it's just a bunch of flat added chaos everywhere, meaning that I have put a whole bunch of damage onto my Tempest Shield. I've put a whole bunch of damage onto a Ball Lightning of Orbiting that's coming from Svalin. I've got a whole bunch of extra damage on my actual Cyclone itself, which has something like 500,000 tooltip DPS. And it means that we're kind of a true Battle Mage style gameplay as well, because our Cyclone does damage, we can leech off of it, and then all the spells do damage. But on top of that, we're kind of like an AFK setup, thanks to the Tempest Shield, the Svalin combo, the usual, and that stuff does some pretty heavy damage that lets you actually just clear without really even having to do too much. And yeah, it seems like it's a bit of a one-stop shop template, because getting like 3,000 flat added chaos is more powerful than your average Alberon's Warpath, replica Alberon's build, and then you just kind of build around whatever you want. And it can be spells, it can be attacks. I've seen, after having looked into the ward issue, I've seen a lot of people do basically flat chaos with Paradoxica, and then kind of whatever skill you want, and it looks like an insanely strong setup with kind of like sky's the limit. So I think my ward at the moment is pretty decent, but it's nothing crazy. People go well over 30k and even into much higher numbers, nearing 100 from what I've heard. But yeah, I've gone kind of a humble attempt again, 10 to 20 divines at most, something like that. And the chest piece that you need for this entire thing is based around armor and evasion, and you just craft one of those with dense fossils, and anything over like 3k of each is good enough to get you to probably about 30,000 ward, if that's what you want. The actual thing of ward kind of loses its meaning with Night Grip. It doesn't become as good of a defensive modifier for you anymore, and that's why building into block is so powerful with it, because it gives you that additional sort of defensive layer for utilizing the ward to a better kind of effectiveness, so that it actually helps you out. And I'll go over exactly what ward is in just a second when I show off the whole character. But it's still not the best defensive mechanic, but it is much better than it ever used to be. The problem is Night Grip makes it a lot worse, because you turn a lot of your defense into offense, and who doesn't love doing that? So far so good on the character. It's very good for blasting maps, and it's also very good currently for single target, but Don't exactly know how it goes in true endgame, so we'll see how that goes. But for now, let me go ahead and show you how I got this character to this point. So here we are, currently level 92. Mathil, what does Ward do? And the answer to that question is it's essentially a kind of layer similar to Energy Shield in that it protects your life pool to begin with, but it's an all or nothing system. So any kind of hit that you actually take will use your ward to protect you from that hit, however much ward you have, and then consume it entirely until it regens back up. These days, with Antiquarian and with a change to it, it's a lot quicker than it used to be. So at the moment, if something hits me for, let's say, 5 damage, my current massive amount of ward will protect from all of that. It'll all disappear, and we wait till it regens back up so it can protect my life again. If something, for example, hits me for 30,000, then, 4 of that goes through. The ward otherwise protects me for 26. So the idea is, initially, what this thing was supposed to be is you kind of build into, evasion, block, and then occasionally take a bit less extra damage thanks to the ward until it regens back up. These days, it's pretty damn quick, so it can be up for your life bar pretty much all of the time. But the one issue with our current damage setup is you're running Night Grip, which gives you damage based off a ward, but 75% of damage taken bypasses the ward, which means, I think, is what it means, is it's not really protecting our life in the best way anymore. It just reduces the amount of damage we're going to take for that one hit, as opposed to like blocking an entire big amount and then the regen again. Either way, it still becomes a decent defensive mechanic, especially when paired with block, and we're letting ourselves have a good use of Svalin in this one because it kind of synergizes really, really well, and it's not too costly anymore. 4 divines is not that unreasonable, and it is kind of just a really good additional damage scaling method because you can just put anything into here, anything elemental that is. I still want to try out Tornado. I've yet to do so, but pretty much anything elemental, and then it'll proc whenever you block and get the full brunt of our damage. As you can see here, an extra 10,000 chaos on the ball lightning. The one thing I didn't mention up to now throughout the video is I kind of wanted to build around trigger lightning bolt when you deal a critical strike, and that's helping us single target in this build because it's only a level 5 lightning bolt. Sure, that's terrible, but because we have so much damage going across the board, you can see that my level 5 lightning bolt that does almost nothing turns into 180,000 chaos on the tooltip here. And if we take out void manipulation, you can see what the actual lightning bolt itself is doing. 60 to 1,000, and then I have an additional 135,000 chaos on top of that. It procs, twice a second if you're proccing it well enough, and then it should theoretically just help a lot with single target as just basically free damage. Or initially I was thinking of going like Mjolnir and then having another proc source that way, but I like the idea of the claw just for filling out a bit more crit attack speed, crit multi. But given that we are Antiquarian, which is a bit of a tough thing to build around, we do have hits can't be evaded, so that definitely made me think I should use a Mjolnir. But in the end, I wanted to do the lightning bolt tech a bit more, and that's what I landed on. But the main thing about the Ascendancy is 50% of armor and evasion from equipped body armor gets turned into ward, and then you have 100% global defenses. That's typically been the only real meaningful way of scaling ward in the past, but we've also got the hat for increases and reductions to maximum energy shield instead applied to ward. So we've got global defenses that gives us extra ward, but we've also got int and energy shield percentage that turns into ward as well. Likewise, we've also got this belt that you can quality up that gives you gain ward instead of 60% of armor and evasion from equipped body armor. And that means that our body armor doesn't actually give us any armor evasion rating anymore. It just turns entirely into ward. And that's most of where your ward is coming from. Then this scales a lot as well. And then you just fill out your tree however you really want for damage and a bit more ward scaling. So my tree at the moment is basically 2 clusters. I rolled just a couple for unspeakable gifts, which is where we're getting our chaos explode, and another one over here, which ended up just being 3 passives for like damage. But then I grabbed some megalomaniacs with unspeakable gifts. So megalomaniac and some block, and some block. And then over here, I think, is another megalomaniac with unspeakable gifts. Anything like above 20% chance will start to feel really good and reliable for the explosions, but we currently have 30% just to make it even smoother. So yeah, I do recommend getting, if you're going to use one, it's not going to feel too consistent. I recommend getting at least two of these types of things before you really feel the power of the explosions. And then mostly just filled out like a bit of extra block nodes from our megalos. But it's a bit of a versatile sort of a setup. You could instead like go more down there and spec a bit better block and stuff. Currently I'm spec'd a bit into this block, and you can see that I currently have 65 attack block and 68 spell block, and then when that's lucky it turns into something like 90%. It's pretty fucking crazy. And then most of your defense is just not getting hit and recovering some life from things like 1 with shield, 50 life when you block, and 20 life when you block, and 20 mana when you block, which means that whenever this ball lightning actually procs, it's basically refunding itself. So that is the basis for the build. Night Grip that gives us a lot of added chaos that then goes towards Tempest Shield, goes towards Svalin, goes towards my Reap and Cyclone setup, and then also the Lightning Bolt. So yeah, that's, I don't know, some kind of slight different idea that I was going for on Ward. Of course, we could have gone for like just pure spell damage build, or Paradoxica with a bunch of added chaos, and then just utilize that double damage there. I did initially think that maybe I'd do a Timeless Jewel to make sure that stats don't do anything, because it's tough to do dexterity to the point that we need, because we need 200 and what, like 40 dexterity just to take care of our current chests, claw for requirements, because the 50 reduced dexterity is pretty annoying. But we go through that to get the hits can't be evaded, but more importantly we go through that just to get the 50 block instead of 23 on Svalin, which means we need way less block to camp ourselves out. That's the main reason I kind of went through this way, because yeah, I could just craft hits can't be evaded on my claw, it'd be just as easy. But I overcame the reduced dexterity with some good dexterity on an amulet, and yeah, a little bit on a ring as well. So we overcame that problem and then got to use the 50 block there. But otherwise you could do the Timeless Jewel that just gives you no stat requirements. You then won't be able to use Faith Guard. You then have to scale just in more generic ways for like increased defense. It is quite a lot at the moment that it's giving us. As you can see, it's 8,000 ward. When I put on a real hat that just does like 800 ward, it only turns into like 2,000. So it is substantially more at the moment, but you could also just not have to worry about those stats, which is what some people do. I currently have a Timeless Jewel just to turn 3 nodes into crit, and minion damage, and I am utilizing the minion damage spiritual aid to get a bit of extra damage on my claw, which I rolled with Fear Essences, and also on my ring, which was just a fractured 30 damage. Aside from that, not too much else to mention, I don't think. We don't really need Unwavering Stance, but it does feel good, because whenever you like block stunned hits, you still get kind of stunned, and that may stop your Cyclone occasionally. So I may unspec that to get some, more effective damage or something, but for now I'm keeping it. I'm getting Wither here with 5% chance for the 15, combined with Overwhelming Malice, which turns all of my Fizz on the Reap into Chaos, and then also generates a bunch of extra Wither, which sometimes should go to 15, thanks to the 5% over here. Otherwise, yeah, I'm still not fully sure what I'm finishing the character off with. Certain stuff. Otherwise, just leveling, Void Manip over here, crit strikes. I need a crit multi probably instead of this, because I'm so low on crit multi, but for now I'm still just using that. Otherwise, yep, Cycling, cast on crit, got Reap with Var Reap. You can have anything basically here, but bear in mind that if you're using something that isn't a life cost for the trigger, then you're going to have to suffer the consequences of a bit of extra mana, which means you're going to have to roll like minus mana on rings and probably spec into at least a little bit of like mana reduction, most likely. But I do get most of my mana back from the Claw here with 14 mana gain per hit. That's kind of why I also wanted to go the Claw route. Yeah, we'll still experiment a bit with some other stuff. I'll probably try and run some simulacrums and see if I can do those kind of deathless, because we should be an okay character for it. And also I'm getting a lot of life recovery from a Watcher's Eye here. That was 2 Divines at the time. Vitality life gain hit, bit of extra crit with Zealotry. So that's partially how I can sustain my life off of all the things that are happening, and also get that AFK type of setup happening when we're just getting attacked. I can still grab a Rune Flask, I think it's called, with a bit of extra ward. May still do that. Currently just using this to fill out a bit of extra chaos though. The Olroth Flask reduces our damage dramatically, so I'm not using that. And it's also very expensive and very rare. But I don't know, maybe it's worth doing if you want to do that. For now though, that's probably all I'll say. Pretty fucking crazy interactions with ward, and you can get a lot of damage out of this type of setup. And have some pretty crazy builds, and kind of just a template for whatever you want to do. So with that, thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.